My name is Judith and I will present the work of Ronda, Marc and me about the intricacies of social robots in complex social settings. For most roboticists, it's common sense. A sociable robot is socially in a human-like way, and interacting with it is like interacting with another person. Robots just stand in for humans or other living beings, for example, a pet, a nurse, a companion. This way of thinking tends to underplay the intricacies of interacting with robots in social settings. What is missing is an idea of the social environment, the practices that evolve, and a reflection on how practices may differ when the social partner is a machine rather than a living being. Thus, in our study, we explore meaningful applications for social robots. What kind of new roles would robots take on in complex social scenarios? Second, we ask how robots designed for social scenarios would change the scenarios and associated practices in the long run. What are the social and ethical implications? Finally, we ask how to design for positive experiences with social robots. What are suggestions for robot design? Our approach is inspired by post-anthropocentric entanglement theories in HCI. Here, sociality is considered neither to be situated in the machine nor in the human, but in their relation. Thus, gaining knowledge about a particular artifact means tracing its relations with others. Further, our approach is related to speculative methods in design. Basis of our approach are so-called fictional documentaries. Fictional documentaries are video reports from the future, in our case created by HCI master students about different fictional social robots, without ever showing the robot itself. The students were asked to create meaningful concepts of robots. Instead of designing the robot, they elaborated on potential everyday scenarios and determined the people and things affected by the robot. They asked fellow students, grandparents, or friends to slip into the roles of stakeholders, such as the CIO of a robot company or a passenger in a train, and to comment on imaginary experiences they made with the robot. The actors were free to improvise. Let's have a look at an excerpt. This fictitious couple imagined living with a conflict-mediating robot.
Ist schon seltsam, wenn dann plötzlich von hinten was reinruft, wenn wir diskutieren, oder plötzlich anfängt, eine unserer Stimmen zu imitieren. Manchmal fragen wir uns dann selber, was hast du da gerade gesagt oder so, weil wir ein bisschen verwirrt sind, weil er die Stimmen so gut imitiert teilweise.
Man fragt sich oft auch, hast du das jetzt gesagt oder der Roboter? Mit der Zeit haben wir uns so in unserer Streitkultur verbessert, dass wir teilweise Sachen gesagt haben, die am Anfang nur der Roboter gesagt hätte. Und dann war das aber wirklich die andere Person.
All in all, 8 fictional documentaries about 8 robots evolved. For example, about Polly, a robot that teaches cultural knowledge to people with migration background. We applied a thematic analysis to the 8 videos. What revealed 4 categories of application scenarios. In the first 2 categories, robots featured a dyadic interaction with the robot as a substitute for a human partner. They focused on primarily practical tasks with social outcome, for example, organizing appointments, or, in the second category, addressed the social explicitly, for example, watching movies with people. Robots of the third and fourth category went beyond the dyadic and mediated couples or groups of people in a human-human-robot interaction. They supported with avoiding or resolving conflict and were intended either for public or private domestic settings. Further, our secondary analysis revealed 19 experiences, such as feeling related to others through the robot. We condensed them into 7 themes, such as relatedness. We cross-tabulated themes with the 2 perspectives, dyadic substitution and group mediation, because similar themes played out quite differently depending on these perspectives. We found that the scenarios of our first category, dyadic interaction with practical tasks, are most similar to already existing application scenarios. Although, of course, they have social implications, similarly to robotic vacuum cleaners, here robots rather remain tools. In scenarios of the dyadic substitution perspective, first and second category, social robots replace other humans. From our perspective, these scenarios, while obvious, are questionable. Either the technology will not be human-like enough, for example, a robotic nurse will lack emotional warmth, or it will be raising difficult ethical questions. For example, is artificial emotional warmth acceptable at all? In scenarios of our third and fourth category, the mediation perspective, the very same robot adapted very different roles, for example, a mediator, a therapist, or a black sheep. The roles seem less predetermined by design, but rather emerge from the social dynamics of the group. These scenarios seem less explored so far. From our perspective, they are most interesting for future development. Most of the challenges reported depend on the idea that robots are similar to humans and compete with them. For example, the anxiety of being replaced by a robot or of being deceived by a humanoid robot. Only in a few cases, interviewees felt provoked by the superhuman qualities of robots. For example, a robot is perceived as superior since it approaches disputes in an unbiased manner. At the heart of the robotic benefits are imagined skills humans value but find impossible to realize. For example, always being present or never forgetting anything. In mediation scenarios, interviewees mentioned abilities such as being objective or concentrating on facts instead of feelings. For example, fictional passengers on trains reported feeling less personally attacked by the robot than by other people when criticized. It seemed crucial for the robot not to be overly understanding or polite. Being social obviously means something different when dealing with robots. All in all, the benefits evolve not because the robots are one-to-one substitutes of living beings, but because typical machine attributes distinguish them from humans. Unlike most HRI methods, our method puts the focus on the social dynamics that arise instead of on the robot itself. We were able to gather multiple and conflicting viewpoints. Obviously, we just learned how present people imagine to feel about the possibilities of future robots. However, the insights can be used to shape future forms of this technology. The documentaries are a result of a critical co-creation. Since participants never got to see a picture of the robot, there was ample room for imagination, and participants became emotionally involved while performing. The setting, for example, in front of a bus stop, made them think of real experiences they had before. This blurred the boundaries between the actual, that is, their present everyday life, their own identity, and the possible, that is, a future world or possible identity. Of course, the approach has limitations. It depends a lot on the imagination, the talent for role play, and the prior knowledge of the participants. Some participants just reproduced already existing, well-known critiques of robotics instead of actually putting themselves into the suggested scenario. All in all, our approach is speculative, and speculative methods focus on finding problems rather than solving them. We are aware that fictional documentations hypothesize and do not confirm challenges and opportunities for social robots. In sum, we identified 3 suggestions for social robot design. First of all, we saw that social situations of robots are made up by complex dynamics between diverse stakeholders. Thus, we believe designers need to grasp the social complexity first before designing technologies for it. Further, we realized not a smiling face with cute eyes is turning a robot into a social one, but the social impact the robot unfolds. The social is not located in the robot itself, but in its relationships. Thus, be aware of the diverse social powers that a robot develops in relation with others. And finally, we saw 2 paradigms when designing robots. Substituting social powers of pre-existing social beings, that is, human social powers, for example, being compassionate, or applying social powers of machine beings, for example, being objective. Our fictional documentaries demonstrate that robots mimicking humans are afflicted with anxieties. We believe understanding human and robotic powers to be complementary could be key to shaping meaningful social relationships with robots. Thus, we suggest to make use of the unique social powers of robots, the so-called robotic superpowers. Thank you for your attention.